Hey, what's up, Ska? This is Steven and Fantology bringing you another episode. We're covering Mistborn, The Final Empire. This is the first Mistborn book, and this is a special episode of Fantology because we have some guest stars. We have Cydne and Paiton on the line, along with Ryan and Ben. So we've got 5 Fantology members here, ready to break down Mistborn. How's it going, everyone? How did you guys like this book?
I loved it. I'm a little bit confused why you called Cydne and Paiton Fantology members, though.
We're new. Getting started.
Ryan's roasting us.
Are they really members? Have you guys listened to a full podcast episode, either of you?
In fact, I have. I took time out of my day. Yeah, I did.
Paiton has. What
I'm
about?
pretty sure. At least 90% of one.
Okay. My own wife isn't even sure that she's listened to a full episode of this podcast.
We'll treat this like a tryout. If they do well, they're in. If not, they're out. So listeners, let us know what you think of some diversity featured in Fantology.
Yeah, this is as diverse as we get around here for now. But it's a good thing for this book, right? We're going to stick with the theme in this book.
I might have said some things about Cydne in previous podcasts, how she did not like fantasy and how she would never read a fantasy book. And I guess I'm happy to say that I was wrong.
Yeah, let's dive into that a little bit more. So Cydne, defend yourself, because I've heard Ryan say that before, that you're not much of a fan of the genre, but sounds like you were way into Mistborn, yeah?
Yeah, so I started Way of Kings, could not get into it.
She read the prologue, the most confusing part of the book.
It was confusing. Like I said, I couldn't get into it. And then Ryan had me listen to the start of another book. What was it called?
It was the Licanius book 1.
That one was it was good. I still wasn't totally into it to listen to it on my own. But yeah, we started listening to Mistborn on a road trip, and I got hooked.
And Paiton was also on that road trip, and she also got hooked.
Okay, so what is it about Mistborn? Because Cydne, you talked about 2 examples of other books that maybe are a little too complex to get into. So both of you guys, what was it about Mistborn that really drew you in?
I like fantasy books. I honestly would say that I probably just don't take the time out of my day to read them. I get very busy and distracted with other things. I don't know how it ended up, but Ryan basically told Cydne and I we were going to listen to this fantasy book on this car ride, and we didn't really have a choice. And from there, I was like, okay, you know what? I really like this book, actually. And the next day, I kept listening to it more and more, and then I got addicted. So I think for me, it wasn't necessarily, I'm not into fantasy. It was just sitting down, taking the time out of my day to actually listen.
Yeah, and Paiton, what was the other book series that you said was your favorite before this one?
Oh, I really like Divergent. Nice throwback.
Ooh, Divergent. Okay. I tried that one. Didn't make it too far, unfortunately.
But if you do like Divergent, this could be this is similar, right? It's kind of like a next progression, a step maybe forward, or I don't know. It's in the same vein as Divergent. You have a strong female character that is participating in this dystopian society, right? It's similar.
Yeah, this is like an adult version, I guess. Right? So Sanderson writes adult fantasy, which is kind of a funny moniker for the genre. He's laughed about it before. I remember sitting in his class where he made a joke about that. But all jokes aside, yeah, I believe you, Ben. I think this is just kind of a step up along that type of story.
And I think for me, it would make complete sense. After I finished Divergent, I remember looking for similar books to this and not finding any joy in those books until I read Mistborn, and I was like, okay, this is why I liked reading fun books. It kind of brought me back.
And so, Paiton, you've read all 3 of the Mistborn Era 1 books, right? You've read the whole trilogy?
No, I'm halfway through the second one right now. Actually, I think I'm 3/4 now. So I'm almost done with that one, Well of Ascension, and then I'll start the third one as soon as I'm done.
But this isn't a span. You started, a week and a half ago?
Yeah.
So this is pretty quick in terms of reading.
And Cydne, you're looking to move on to the next book, right, as well?
Yeah, I started Well of Ascension 2 days ago. Still in part 1.
Okay, very nice. A lot of people have said Mistborn's a great entry into the genre, so we can kind of talk about some of the specific reasons as we get into it a bit more. And I think there are a lot of really concrete reasons why the book is so good, and something that even entry-level fantasy fans can enjoy.
And so I guess Steven, myself, me being Ryan, and Ben would all consider ourselves a bit more hardcore fantasy fans. And we all completed Mistborn for the first time quite a while ago, right? And we reread it, all three of us, recently. So we've all read Mistborn, at least the first book, at least 2 times. Is that correct for you guys?
Yeah, we're huge nerds and have been for a while, is what you're saying, I believe.
I was trying to put it in a way that sounded a bit better, but yeah.
Yeah, this is my second time through Mistborn. And it was also my first fantasy book that I really got into. In high school I picked up The Eye of the World and didn't get into it. And then when I was like a sophomore in college, I read this book and it started my journey throughout fantasy. So
you wouldn't consider Twilight your first foray into fantasy?
Ryan, I blame you for that.
What? You blame me? I was not the one who got the other one to read Twilight and then dragged them to the movie theater to see the first movie on Thanksgiving Day. Anyways, back to Mistborn.
Yeah, Twilight is a whole different conversation. So, Mistborn, before we do any spoilers, let's do a content warning for the book. This is kind of what we typically do to give you guys some idea of what to expect, because books don't really have movie ratings in the same way. So, Mistborn's like a PG-13 movie, right? There's a lot of violence, which you typically get from a fantasy book. Some of it's a little brutal, but there's no swearing. There's in-world swearing, which Sanderson likes to do, and there's hardly any sexual content at all, if any. So Mistborn is, I would say, pretty safe to read for teens and up.
Yeah, there's some pining for other characters in the book, but yeah, I would agree with that. Just violence would put it up to PG-13, but pretty much everything else is PG rated, I'd say.
You also have I think Vin is scared that she's going to get raped a few times. So you have that kind of playing into it. So just, I guess, be aware of that.
Sure, yeah, the Ska have been oppressed in a lot of ways. So let's move on to specific spoiler talk. If you haven't read the book yet, this would maybe be the time to do so. So I'm going to kind of talk everyone through the plot. You guys feel free to jump in with observations, hot takes, theories, whatever. We're not going to do spoilers for the next 2 books either, especially because Cydne and Paiton haven't got there yet. So that would be really messed of us to do that. But we might ask them what they think might happen. So those theories are on the table, but no specific spoilers. So the book starts with Kelsier's point of view. This is kind of the prologue. Kelsier is this mysterious figure that goes into this Ska tenement area and takes down one of these oppressive nobleman type houses, or not the whole house, but one of these outlying almost homesteads.
Plantation,
sure. And this is your first introduction into the world. So Sanderson really has to kind of string you along and build out the world. I think the very first line of the book is "Ash fell from the sky." And from then on, you picture this whole world in black and white and gray. There's hardly any color at all. It's a very vivid, not vivid because there's no color, but the black and white and gray is very vivid for me, at least. So I have a great depiction of the world in my mind as I'm reading through, based off of the very beginning. And then you start to kind of get ideas of there's magic going on here, and there's all these different factions, and it's definitely not Earth. And so this is, I think, a real good introduction into the fantasy genre as far as world building goes right from the beginning.
I think that's something that really kept me interested in it too, was that I feel like the details that Brandon Sanderson would put in throughout the whole book really helped me visualize what was happening. I could see it as if I was watching a movie, and that definitely helped me stay into it. He did a good job of balancing the action, the different character relationships, and just describing what things look like.
I thought it was interesting. I was watching one of Sanderson's streams recently, and he talked about how the majority of every book you read is just going to be characters sitting around the room talking to each other. And how do you make that interesting? And I felt like he was able to do that super well in this book. He had characters sitting around these ornate parties talking, and he had characters sitting around in these hideouts planning on completing this heist. So it was they were all just sitting around talking, but you were able to picture it so well that it was really engaging throughout all those parts.
So on that, I thought some of the talking was more interesting than other talking. I really liked the book, but there were some weaknesses for me. And I think you really see that this is the second book that Brandon Sanderson published. And in future books, just his character development and the way that he kind of flows the narrative around gets a lot better. So there were some times where I was a little bored of the talking, or I kind of struggled to really get into some of the minor characters. But I mean, I agree with you. That's true of fantasy books. Like, you have to make the talking interesting, and overall, he does a really good job in this book. But I think he does better in future books.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
But his strengths, I think, still shine through, which is his world building and the plot, the story that he tells. Those are still Brandon Sanderson through and through.
So what happens after Kelsier takes out that nobleman and that house?
Yeah, so we continue to get the world built, and this is a theme throughout the entirety of the narrative. Vin is like training, getting better with the metals, learning more about the magic system. It's all being slowly given to you in little pieces, which is nice because if he was just to dump this on you all at the beginning, it would not be digestible. So there's a slower kind of learning curve, if you will, of the world building. And the next thing that happens is we get an intro into Vin. Vin is part of a crew led by this dude named Cayman, and they're planning this heist that doesn't go very well. This is your intro to Vin, kind of intro to what's going on in Luthadel and the oppression you see in the Ska, the noble houses, etc. So Kelsier comes in and saves Vin, and Vin is now introduced into the rest of the crew, and you learn about what they are planning and what's going on here. So it starts very quickly, and there's a lot of info being given to you, but I think it's done in a really good way where it's all through Vin's eyes, and so you are learning along with her, and that makes it very understandable for the reader because we all kind of connect to Vin as a younger character that has no idea what's going on, because the reader, you also don't know what's going on.
Yeah, so I guess I'll ask Peyton, in every book, one of the best, most rewarding parts is when the main character realizes that they have like this amazing power. Like, for example, Harry Potter, you have that scene where he's like, I'm a wizard? I can't be a wizard, like, and it just like dawns on him.
Yeah, the Just Harry scene.
You're a Mistborn, Vin.
Yeah, so how did you, Peyton, think he did revealing that about Vin, and how do you think she reacted?
I felt like it was done very well, mainly because if I had these magical powers, kind of understand that sure she'd be able to use them to some degree and level without recognizing that's what it was. Especially if she grew up this way, this is how she's been her entire life. She wouldn't understand that she's different. It's kind of like the theory of like, I don't know if I see different colors than everybody else. It's the same thing. She really doesn't know, and so then to realize for her that, oh wow, like, wait, not everybody can do this. This is just me, which she knew a little bit, but not fully, I think was a very like key point, not only for her, and it was done very well by Brandon Sanderson.
Yeah, I thought it was cool how she was like able to use her emotional elemency so well without even knowing that she was doing it. And I thought it was cool that they're able to have that power. Because like you think about Mistborn and you think about like the pushing and the pulling is the thing that you think about first, like with Steel and being able to like fly around and stuff. But the other aspects are really cool, and it's cool that she was able to use that emotional elemency so well from such a young age.
Yeah, there's nice little kind of hints into her powers because it makes sense that she would have developed those over the years of just trying to survive. Totally makes sense.
Yeah, and I liked what you mentioned, like her survival. I really think that if she didn't use a little bit of it when she was younger, her survival wouldn't have happened, essentially. It's what made her an invaluable person to the crew, even though relatively nothing else about her was valuable.
One thing with Vin's revelation of becoming a Mistborn is there wasn't like a big aha moment, if you will. It was just kind of fairly obvious. And Kelsier's like, you're a Mistborn, let me start training you. And off we go. So I could have seen a little more payoff with that if it was some kind of twist reveal. But there's enough other twist reveals throughout the rest of the book that's fine. I think you can't make everything super surprising and rewarding in that way. It was rewarding in terms of just character and growth from that point.
Yeah, I felt like one of my favorite scenes is still when Kelsier takes Vin out to kind of train her for the first time, and he like pushes her out off of the wall, and she's forced to kind of like try and survive, but like that Kelsier like has her back. So that was kind of like the almost the aha scene where like you start realizing she starts realizing what she can do. She starts like applying it in her head all these different ways. So that's still one of my favorite scenes throughout the whole series.
Yeah, and that's part of a series of scenes where Vin is getting trained. She slowly kind of learns how to use all the different metals from different members of the crew. We learn what the crew's plan is. They have this elaborate plan to start a house war and get the Ska to rebel and have this army. And then Kelsier, it's always nebulous what Kelsier is going to do. He's just going to take out the Lord Ruler with this 11th metal, and they all believe him, which you're always kind of wondering as a reader, like, is this just going to work? It doesn't seem like it's going to work, because the Lord Ruler is so powerful, and we're just gonna, use this MacGuffin thing to take him down. So that's kind of interesting, and it doesn't work out at the end, and there's a nice twist there. So I thought that was really well executed. But the other thing that's going on here is Vin is kind of starting to grow as a character. She's learning to actually trust people. She has a really hard time with this, obviously, and she has a especially strong bond with Cydne, who is kind of her wise wizard type figure. I mean, him and Kelsier combined do a really good job of training her and kind of bringing out her character. And this book is really all about Vin's character from beginning to end, where she ends up and how she grows. So I think this beginning part is really important because we see her not want to trust all these people, even though they all seem like really pretty solid, altruistic folks that she's never before met. She doesn't believe people like this exist out in the world.
That was actually something that Cydne kept mentioning to me when we were listening to the book, is how much she enjoyed the interactions between Vin and Cydne.
Yeah, I would say that was one of my favorite parts. I feel like I just really liked their friendship, their relationship, how he was a mentor figure to her, but he had a good sense of humor and they seemed to get along really well. I could just picture them almost like not quite a brother-sister relationship, but just a really fun friendship.
So, Sid, do you think, so you obviously tried Way of Kings and Lycanius before this, couldn't get into them. Do you think the fact that the book followed such a strong female, young girl protagonist was that one of the reasons why you enjoyed this book?
I definitely think that was a huge part of it, was I feel like I was able to relate to her and I was more interested in her storyline. And I also feel like Brandon Sanderson did a good job of not having the whole entire book be fight scenes. Those were great, but I didn't really listen to every detail of them. I liked more of the relationship building with her and the other crew members, as well as just the parties that they were going to, the conversations they had there. I feel like those really captivated me.
So one of the criticisms of male authors often is their portrayal of female characters. So I'm curious to hear Cydne Paiton's opinion on how they feel like Vin was portrayed.
I feel like she was portrayed really well. I don't really have a lot of fantasy to compare it to, but I felt like she was very relatable, not completely towards me. I'm definitely not in her position at all. Don't imagine
you are not a Mistborn.
Fighting off people, but I do feel like I liked hearing her thought process, and she had a sense of vulnerability, just being small and in a feminine shape, body, but she was also very strong and very thoughtful in every move that she made, and I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I think one of my favorite parts was that she was this very strong woman in this very small and timid personality and body. I feel like it was such a stark contrast that I really enjoyed it, seeing her growth, because when at the beginning of the book, when we first start, she fits that very small, timid body. She's a very small person. She likes to hide in the shadows and make herself small. And as she's growing, as she's learning, she starts becoming this bigger person without even outwardly expressing it, which makes me almost love her even more, just because she is lovable. She becomes lovable just by the fact of I want you to know how awesome you are because you're so humble and timid about it.
I feel like there's so much you could dive into just her character being a woman. I feel like a lot of women can relate to that, of kind of society telling them to be more shy, more timid, not showing all of their talents. But I feel like Vin does a good job of kind of pushing through the cultural barriers and just using what she has. And like I said, you can dive really deep into that, of what that could mean for us today and stuff.
I like the parts where she is putting on the Valette persona, and at the beginning, she doesn't know how to do it, and she's really, like you say, shy and uncertain. But then by the end, she kind of like sees herself as that person, as that strong person, as that member of the society. She sees the nobleman as really no better than the ska or no better than herself, and you can tell that she's like set up to become a leader going forward in some capacity, although we are not going to talk the rest of the series yet.
I liked seeing her as Velette because it was something that I feel like all of us can relate to some degree. I don't know, when I started college, it was one of those things where it's like, oh man, I see all these other people doing it. I haven't done it though. I'm uneasy. I'm walking around. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know exactly how to fit in. I kind of been told what to do. And then slowly you get in the groove where by the end you're like, okay, wow, like I'm a college student. And I feel like that happens to everybody with everything almost that you go through in life, starting a new job, going on an airplane for the first time, all these big moments. And he portrayed that perfectly for me.
So yeah, the fact that Vin is our protagonist is a huge part of this book, something that definitely needs to be talked about. So I'm glad we had that conversation. If you're on YouTube, you can see the nice mural behind me that Fantology has commissioned by Mark Wells. And one of the things that we talked about in making this depiction of different fantasy characters was we were trying to come up with solid female protagonists that we could put into this picture. And we struggled to come up with enough of them. So Vin is in there, and she's a standout. And I think we need more of these types of characters in fantasy books going forward.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
We kind of talked about a lot of the different elements of the plot here. I'm going to kind of pick up the pieces here. So the main thing, I guess the next impetus for jumping into the next part of the plot, Vin goes to a ball. She kind of starts to learn about herself a little bit. She meets Elend. He's kind of this weird bookish character that seems significant. And then Vin and Kelsier go on this raid to the palace called Creedic Shaw. They're investigating the secret chamber that exists somewhere, and it's disastrous because the Inquisitors are waiting for them there. But Vin is able to escape despite getting a pretty bad wound, and we're actually kind of not sure if she's going to survive or not, although of course she is because she's the protagonist and it's early in the book. Or she also finds this book, this mysterious book that is going to be very important. We don't know what it is quite yet, but Cydne is going to start translating it. And Vin is now laid up. She's in a convalescence period for a few weeks. And during that time, she learns more about Cydne, about Terrismen, who can do this different form of magic than Allomancy called Fruchemy. And then she goes to another ball. She meets with Shan Alariel, who is Elend's old fiance. We get this idea that Elend is more than meets the eye because he's reading these contraband books. And then there's this scene where there's the ska beggar who is just killed offhandedly in the shadows. And so another theme of this book is this conflict between the nobleman and the ska and the crew, who are all ska themselves. But Vin is like learning about Elend and the other noblemen, and like some of them seem like they're all right. So this is kind of interesting, like all the different culture clashes and the culture that the Lord Ruler has built up throughout his empire.
Yeah, I would say that's probably one of the best parts of this book is that it doesn't shy away from tackling like really complex social issues that have very direct like, parallels to our world. So that's one thing I appreciate about Brandon Sanderson. And he does it really well, and he's also not shy about admitting when he might make mistakes, or which I don't think there's that many in this book. So I appreciate that. I also thought it was crazy that like I always call him Elend. Is it Elend?
Elend.
Did I say Elend? Close enough.
So I thought it was crazy when Elend was like, Vin, do you know ska? Like, are they as smart as you and me? You know what I mean? Like, it just shows you that you can like grow up with like these views, even if you're like sincerely trying to figure it out. If you've never met a ska, how are you supposed? You just have to believe what other people tell you about them, right?
Yeah, big time unconscious bias happening here, right?
Yeah, and then the fact that like you're smiling as a reader because you're like Vin's a ska, you know, and she's infiltrating your noble hierarchy. And it was cool that Elend was like so humble that he was able to see that as a really cool thing and not be like intimidated by that.
Ben, I think you made a post on our Discord not too long ago about the value you see in fantasy books. And the fact that there are some really good, solid messages about society, etc., contained in them. And so, yeah, I like your comment there, because certainly Brandon Sanderson has some layers to this onion. It's not just this fun fantasy story. Like, there are some solid things that are going on behind the scenes. And also, shout out to our Discord. If you like Fantology, check out our Discord and chat with us.
Yeah, so since we're talking about Ellen right now, did you guys think that relationship was cheesy? Was it just the right amount of cheese? Was it? I see Steven shaking his head. So I'm gonna ask for Sid's opinion first here, though.
I loved it. I also really like chick flicks, so that was a huge pull for me. I really liked their relationship and the possibility of there being a romance. Obviously, I feel like a majority of that is in the second and third books, which is definitely keeping me into listening to those. But yeah, I really liked it. I didn't think it was cheesy. I mean, you kind of know where it's going, but you kind of know that about chick flicks too.
Ben, this was actually my worst of the best.
Oh no! I think you might be pulling Stevens from near him too.
I have a different one, but this is a similar thing for me. Go ahead, Ryan.
I just thought that it was the part where Vin says inside her head, like, I think she was like doing something because she loved him. And it was like she admits it to herself that she loves Ellen. And I was just kind of, I didn't feel like they had interacted enough and developed their relationship to the point where they could know that they had loved each other. Maybe it's a representation of the fact that they're both still relatively young and they don't quite know what love is. Maybe that's, obviously they do develop, their relationship blossoms, but I thought that it was a bit premature on her part to think that she was in love with him.
But she's also young. I feel like it's like her very first like little crush. She doesn't really know if it's love, but this is the very first time she's felt that. So she's like, I must love him. And you never hear that from Ellen. I think he's a little bit more mature with his feelings. He kind of plays hard to get a little bit. But I feel like Vin is just so young and just like likes him, has a crush on him, and so just like goes all in.
Well, Len for sure commits to her.
Yeah, Ellen is willing to topple his whole entire like hierarchy of, his whole house for her. Okay, let's hear Peyton.
Okay, 100% it's young love. Coming from a 19-year-old girl. That is the definition of young love right there. It's, you interact with someone a couple of times and you're like, oh my gosh, we have all these things in common and you care about me somewhat decently, and bam, it's love. Like, I feel like it's exactly what Sid said. It's just her first encounter with love. It's the first time she's realizing like, oh dang, this is what love could be. And I think will grow to learn more what that means in future books, which haven't gotten there yet.
And I feel like it's also just from the girl's perspective. I think any girl listening to this podcast can relate to going on one date with a guy, going back with your girlfriends, like, I'm totally in love. Like, you don't really know him, but you just kind of fall head over heels. I feel like that's very relatable for, like, a girl's thought process sometimes. Not all the time.
Vin is very different from a modern day girl, though, especially with her upbringing. I don't know.
Well, that was also kind of Kelsier's response, right? Like, oh, Vin, like, what do you know about love? Like, he's a nobleman. He's just going to betray you or whatever. So I thought that you had that balance that Vin was encountering, and she was able to kind of like push past that. And by the end, Kelsier was begrudgingly saving Ellen's life. So that was pretty cool to kind of see that whole thing kind of pan out that way.
I'm going to say Vin is like 16 and Ellen is 21. I know Ellen says exactly how old he is, and I think if you can look in Coppermind and find this out exactly, but I'm pretty sure there's a 5-year age difference. They're both fairly young. So yeah, I'll agree with the young love thing.
He's 21. I remember
Confirmed. Okay, rad. So my thing with I agree with that. Sure, it's young love, and that all makes sense. The thing that I didn't like was at the end when Ellen comes and saves her. Well, kind of saves her. Like, he shows up, but like she doesn't really need to be saved by him at that point. So she's like totally into it, right? She's saying, "Oh my gosh, you came back for me. No one's ever came back to me." Yes, they have. Sazed has literally saved your life 2 times and actually done stuff for you. And you're here freaking out about Ellen coming back in with like a handful of guards. I mean, yeah, it's a nice gesture for him. Like, sure, it shows some commitment to her. but I feel like maybe she's just dissing on Sazed and not giving him the credit he deserves. And I get it, there's like a difference in romantic feelings, but this bugged me because Sazed is awesome and saves her life twice, and he gets no recognition.
I feel like I have a minimal of an answer to this. I think she thinks that Caesar is saving her because Kelsier told him to. Like, it was almost...
Well, that's true. I mean, it's kind of his servant duties.
Whereas...
Yeah, but they have a real friendship, right?
Yeah, but it's like he has to. Like, I think she's surprised by Ellen because, like, he chose to do that. He did not need to.
Well, I think it was also that Kelsier was telling Vin that Ellen was going to abandon her the whole time.
No. Reen was telling Vin.
Well, Reen, but also Kelsier was like, he's noble. He's just going to...
Oh, I see.
Doesn't care about you. So Vin was having people that she really respected tell her that Ellen didn't care about her, and then he did. So there's kind of a difference there.
I know. I'm very biased because I really like their relationship, so I'm going to be all in for it.
I like their relationship too. I just thought that they were a bit premature in parts.
He also did come back, though, after he, like, left, right?
Yeah, so she might have thought that he was going to abandon her.
Yeah, that's true. He had given her the cold shoulder.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the whole Venture House was leaving.
Bottom line, though, is Sazed is the hero we need, not the hero we deserve.
Yeah, he gets no... that bugged me. Anyway, to answer your question, Sid, Sazed is a Terraceman keeper. He's also eunuch, and he can do Furukumi. So he's like this totally different class of person, but they're still men, and this is important for the whole thing with the Lord Ruler at the end. So let's skip some scenes here. The next kind of big thing that happens is after the House Wars progressed a bit, the army that had been training under Hammond out in the caves gets wiped out by a foolhardy attack because they think they're a little more invincible than they are, because Kelsier had come in and demonstrated some of his power, and Kelsier and Vin try to get there in time because they hear about that this is happening, but they are unable to do anything. The army's wiped out except for a couple thousand that have a little more sense. So this is another theme of the book, as Kelsier kind of plays almost the Kaladin type here, where he wants to save everyone, but he's not able to. And this is a great example, and it's going to lead into the climax as well.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting because Vin basically had to talk Kelsier down from sacrificing himself at this moment, right? Because he was just going to like join the battle when it was like clear that there was no chance of him doing anything. So it's kind of foreshadowing, right? And it was also cool because they did they burned. Oh, what did they burn? They like pushed themselves to the limit, right?
Pewter. They had a pewter burn to get over there, yeah.
Pewter drag is the technical term.
Pewter drag after, yeah.
It was kind of like this new application that you hadn't seen before, so I appreciated that. So yeah, I was a fan of this. It kind of also got you out of Luthadel, which I thought we needed to be out of Luthadel for a little bit.
It was kind of a nice twist, just in the sense that up until this point, it seemed like pretty much everything that the crew was doing was working out for them. Everything was going according to plan, and suddenly this huge wrench is thrown into their plan, and they need to adapt and change. So it's good because not everything goes the way... You don't want everything to go the way of the protagonist, otherwise it'd be a fairly boring story.
Yeah, we go through the trifail cycle here a little bit, and then a couple other bad things happen because Marsh, Kelsey's brother, is killed, or so we think at the time. He's trying to get into the Inquisition. They go to check on him, and they come across this horrible scene of massacre where there's just body parts everywhere, and then like multiple people have been ripped apart. And the idea is that Marsh has been killed, and we've lost him, so this is way bad, because this also means that the crew is probably compromised, and so everyone's got to pull back. And at this point, everyone except Kelsier is thinking, we tried, we failed, good run. We really showed the ska that they were something after all, but we're going to pack our bags and move on to the next job. Except for Kelsier, who has kind of this weird sense of optimism when everything else seems to be going wrong. It gets you this idea that he had another plan, that he had another secret, as he likes to say. And so this is really towards the climax, and you start to get a sense of like, okay, something's going on here. Not exactly sure what. And so were you guys really drawn in here? I know I was.
So, funny story. Peyton actually texted me. It was like 11 o'clock at night, and she texted me, "He died?" 2 exclamation marks, like a question mark. And I almost spoiled the book for her because she was talking about Marsh, but Marsh is not the death that you think about when you think about this book.
Oh yeah, for sure not.
I almost said, "Yeah, it's crazy that Kelsier died, huh?" And then luckily I stopped myself.
Yeah, get those spoiler tags in there for that type of stuff.
Yeah, I think for me this was a very big shock in the sense that we hadn't really heard from Marsh in a while. So in my eyes, it was like, oh, okay, he's gone doing something else. Like he must be doing good if we're not hearing from him to a certain degree. And then to just walk into this room and see that he's clearly gone, dead, I assumed, was just so shocking for me because thus far we hadn't really lost someone that I cared about so deeply that I was like, wait, you're Kelsier's brother. Like, he has no family left. Help him.
Yeah, I feel like, there's multiple sad parts in the book, but I feel like this was the first, big one. You already feel so bad for Kelsier because he talks to Vin so much about his wife and how he's doing so much of this for his wife to be reunited with her. And you feel sympathy for him, and then this happens, and you just, your heart kind of breaks for him. You're like, this is the only person that he had left.
And as a result, now he is mad. Kelsier is going to take things into his own hands. He goes back to the pits of Hathsin and destroys them using allomancy, which kind of makes you think, why didn't he do this sooner? It wasn't all that much of an effort for him to do it, and it would have been a really strong attack on the Lord Ruler, so unclear as to why that wasn't something that he thought to do sooner and why he just did it now in this fit of rage. But nevertheless, it's done, and then as a result, the Lord Ruler retaliates by capturing some of our guys, including Spook and Lord Renew, who we know is a Khandra in disguise, but we don't know it yet. And so they're about to be killed, and this is probably the first climax. This is the beginning of the end here. Sanderson likes to really string together a lot of action towards the end, and this is where it starts.
I actually have a question about this part. So, is this really a retaliatory act by the Lord Ruler? Because we learn later that night when Straff ventures talking to Elend, he says something along the lines of, when the Lord Ruler finds out what happened at the pits of Hathsin, we're going to be screwed. So is it really a retaliatory act, or did they just happen to catch them and they're just executing that? Or they more have set this as an ambush for Kelsier, right?
That's probably true, Ryan. Thanks for correcting me there. I think initially they think that's what's happened, but you're right. There hasn't been enough time yet for that news to have reached them. So maybe they just happened to catch Spook and Lord Renew and some of the other household people, and they were going to execute them because they caught them.
Yeah.
And they wanted Kelsier.
Yeah, they wanted Kelsier. But I love this part because of the showdown between Kelsier and the Inquisitor. It's just so awesome and epic. I know that Cydne isn't a huge fan of the action.
I know, these are the parts that I skip through, so I'm glad there's a good balance.
Cydne's
like, okay.
There's no relationship building going on here. Just an Inquisitor with iron spikes in his eyes swinging around obsidian axes. I'll just go back to my Instagram feed.
It's let's go back to the ball, please.
But really?
So, yeah, like you said, Ryan, they have the big showdown with the Inquisitor. Kelsier is victorious, and we're all cheering as readers because previously we have not been able to take down any of these Inquisitors. They seem supernaturally powerful, past the limits of allomancy that we know about, so Kelsier does it. But it is short-lived because then he has the big showdown with the Lord Ruler, which is really anticlimactic because Kelsier doesn't even do anything, or so we think at that point as an onlooker. We just see him die.
He literally gets slapped and dies.
So the Lord Ruler gets rushed by a couple dudes and gets pierced through with some spears, doesn't react at all. And we're like, oh snap, this dude, we do not want to mess with him. Kelsier does not back away. He gets backhanded. His face gets pretty much torn away, and then he gets speared through the heart and finished off. And it seems like this is the end of the rebellion, right? It's going to die with Kelsier.
This was a fun part to listen to the second time because I knew what was going to happen, but Cydne did not. And she gasped out loud. And she was just so shocked that a character as central to the plot as Kelsier could die. She was just totally shocked.
Yeah, I completely paused it on a road trip and wasn't going to finish it. I was so upset.
She said she hated the book at that point.
I was like, this is the worst book ever. How could they do that?
So this
And
part
at
just
that
wrecked
point,
you.
Ellen had just told Vin that like he didn't want to talk to her anymore. So I was like, this book isn't going anywhere. This is the worst.
I will say right before Kelsier died, I had to pause the book and go do what I was doing in my real life. And I just had like pent up anxiety. Like I was just anxious. I wanted to know what was going to happen. I feel like to some degree I knew what was going to come. In the sense that when Kelsier died, I did not have as big of a reaction as when Marsh died, which is counteractive. Anyways, not the point. I think it was just, I was almost expecting it to some degree.
And I think you can, because throughout the book, they had this plan of Kelsier was going to take on the Lord Ruler with the 11th medal, and he'd been pressed for details a few times and never said anything. So as a reader, you're thinking like, this dude does not know what he's doing here. It seems like it's not going to go well, and it doesn't.
So you put the book down and you stop until your husband tells you to keep going.
Or you keep on going because the real plan is shortly revealed afterwards. And actually, before that happens, let's talk some moments that I know Ben really likes. There are two really good, solid emotional moments that happen here after Kelsier's death. The first one is when Vin and Cydne have this conversation about what it means to have faith in things, because Vin is like, Kelsier has abandoned us. He never knew what he was doing, and he said he wouldn't die, and he died. And so this is really bad for Vin, because it seems like she's going to take a huge step backwards. And Cydne talks to her about what it means to have faith in things and having faith in things that fail, etc. I think that was a really strong moment. And then also when she gets the note from Kelsier, once his real plan has kind of been revealed, where at the end he says something about how he's going to tell Mare, his wife, about Vin because they always wanted a daughter. Feels right.
I cried during that part the second time I listened to it. I can't remember if I cried the first time, but the second time that might have been because I was like on a super hard bike ride, and so it was tough to hear that. Like, you're the daughter I always wanted. Like, oh my goodness, come on.
So is this messy crying, like tears flowing, really bad sob, or just a single tear? Okay.
It was a single tear. Yeah.
Do you think it's
very manly
because
cry.
You're a father now, whereas you weren't the first time you read it?
It could be that. I don't know. It was just like such a tender thing to say. And it kind of unlike Kelsier, right? Like Kelsier is not a very like feely guy a lot of the time. Like he always tries to be like optimistic and like lift people up. But he doesn't get like deep and personal with people. He always kind of keeps that part of himself away.
I feel like that's my favorite part of Kelsier's. I feel like he has a few of those moments when he's talking to Vin. He doesn't ever reveal that to the crew members, but you can tell that he just has this like father-daughter relationship with her, and I feel like it's really tender. And then it's kind of like the climax of that is right there during that letter.
So the real plan is revealed. The Ska Rebellion starts because fake Kelsier, Seer, as I like to call him, is revealed, and he appears to some of the Ska. This is the Kandra who is always impersonating Lord Renew. And at this point in the book, you're like, what the heck is this Kandra thing? We've seen Mistrace, but the Kandra has ingested Kelsier's bones and can appear in his persona. And so the Ska rally, and there's all these weapons caches that we find throughout the city that Kelsier has prepared. Vin gets the 11th medal, and she thinks that maybe she has a plan to take down the Lord Ruler. So that starts. So the rebellion is happening. There's some fighting breaking out in the street. And Vin is going to go take on the Lord Ruler and figure out his secret. And she tries to and epically fails again because she's captured again. And she actually busts into the secret place that they've been trying to get into the whole time inside the palace. And she sees the Lord Ruler as an old man. And so we're starting to get some clues as to what's going on here. We're not sure yet. But Vin is captured. And then this is the part where Cydne comes in and saves her. And Ellen comes in and kind of saves her. Like, he helps out a bit. And Vin, this is a fun moment where Vin shows off like her true Mistborn form. And Ellen's like, okay, this woman that I'm dating here is could kick my butt at any time she chooses.
Yeah, so that was pretty cool. So, okay, one thing, you might have an answer for this, Ryan or Steven or Peyton or Sid. Why couldn't the Kandra have been the one to die looking like Kelsier?
Because
The
Kandra has to take his bones.
Oh.
They answer that in the book, Ben.
Come on.
So that's good. I was asking on behalf of the audience that is listening.
It's probably also maybe part of the contract that you can't command. Well, actually, sorry, I shouldn't go into any of that right now.
So moving past that, I really loved when Vin goes in with like all these crazy like Mistborn talents and totally like beasts two Inquisitors. Like she like throws a bunch of metal sand in their face and blinds them. That was sweet. And then she like has the arrowheads that have like the metal on them, but then like the obsidian part keeps going or something. Like
Yeah, she pulls off the metal and the arrow keeps going.
yeah, like all these awesome things that like you're like, why didn't I think about that? I've been thinking about what I would do if I was a Mistborn the whole book.
Yeah.
You're not Brandon Sanderson.
But they seem so obvious, you know.
Yeah, that part was really cool. That scene, the ingenuity by Vin, I guess, at that part, and then but it's all for naught because she just gets grabbed from behind.
So she gets captured the first time, and then Elend and Sazed come in, help out, and then now she thinks she has another plan. Now that she's seen the possible past self of the Lord Ruler, she thinks that she knows what to do. She thinks she's going to try to kill the ghost. The metal she's burning is called malatium, by the way. It's an alloy of gold, and she kind of like figures out some of the allomantic theory while she's in the cell. But this plan doesn't work either because she tries to kill the ghost and nothing happens because that's not quite what she thinks it is. And again, it looks like she's captured and things are going badly. But then Marsh comes back. I know Peyton was probably happy about this. Marsh saves her. He pulls out one of the spikes from the back of the Inquisitors, which is still kind of nebulous to us. Like, what is going on with the Inquisitors? How does this work? And so then Marsh thinks he has a plan to kill the Lord Ruler. But that doesn't work either because the Lord Ruler has no spike. And so once again, it seems like the Lord Ruler has won. Like, how many times are we going to come up with plans and fail? And then finally, Vin has the winning hand. But before we go there, reactions from you guys on all of these attempts?
I loved Cydne's reaction to it.
I mean, all the fighting stuff I was like, just kind of sped through. But finding out that Inquisitor was Marsh, I was so excited. I was like, oh my gosh, he's alive. And then I immediately wanted Kelsier to be alive. But
the twist, though, is so cool how, in fact, like you just think that the Inquisitors were interested in Marsh because they thought he was a spy, but it was, in fact, they wanted to recruit him. And they did recruit him to their numbers. And I remember reading it the first time, and it was just so shocking. Just, it's one of those twists that you just wonder how people can be so creative that they can plan these things to just fit so well together and to make so much sense. The aha moments. Those are the moments that I love reading fantasy for.
So this is another, I'm wondering if this is a plot hole, and obviously my other supposed plot hole was addressed head on and I didn't realize it.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because the whole reason why they thought that Spook and the Kandra guy had been captured was because Marsh had revealed their plan, or the Inquisitors had found out that where they were hiding and stuff. But that obviously didn't happen. So how did they catch the crew, right? And how were they able to do that? Unless Marsh did give them up because he was an Inquisitor and he kind of was compelled to do that. Was there the answer for that?
I don't think they explicitly state how they were captured, just that they were captured. I mean, they were just trying to flee via canal or something like that, and
yeah, they're living on the edge. I guess that's the explanation.
Okay, so it just happened to be right after Marsh was captured.
Yeah, it wasn't anything related to Marsh.
Okay, cool. So yeah, what did you think, Peyton? Being a Marsh fan, what did you think when he came back alive?
Honestly, I was very excited to see Marsh, and I thought it was such a cool way to bring him back because he became this like inside man that knew how to help the crew in ways that us, the readers, then the crew, nobody knew about, which for me was just what made the book all the better.
Yeah, I thought it was crazy how the Lord Ruler didn't even see it coming. He was like, what? One of my own? You know what I mean? Like, it was this huge blind spot. And it was crazy because it was right when like the Inquisitors had succeeded in becoming the leaders, or like they had usurped the what are the other people called?
Yeah, they're now in charge of the canton of Inquisition. after the whole thing with Vin's father. I guess we didn't even talk about Vin's father. Kind of a minor detail.
But so suddenly now Marsh is like the sole ruler because he was like the last one standing in a sense. That's pretty crazy.
There are other Inquisitors left.
They're outside of Luthadel.
The word you're trying to come up with is obligators, by the way,
there you
was
go.
the other group of humans that were part of the government. So the final twist, and I like how Sanderson does this. He says that he likes his twist to be surprising yet inevitable. So we've built up this character of the Lord Ruler throughout the book with these little glimpses into the logbook that we think the whole time is written by him, but it's not. The Lord Ruler was in fact the jealous terraceman who killed the guy who was supposed to be the hero back in the day. And Rashek is the name of the Lord Ruler, has the dual powers of Furukami and Allomancy. It's a little complicated, but it makes sense if you get into it. And essentially what he was able to do was survive for so long by using both powers together. Vin realizes this after many different hints into both magic systems, and she pulls off the bracelets where he's basically storing his youthfulness and flings them out into the mist, and she is able to harness the mist in kind of a mysterious way that we don't understand yet and strike down the Lord Ruler. The Lord Ruler, without his bracelets, becomes this old man and slowly dies, and then Vin finally kills him by slamming a spear through his chest. Before he dies, he utters kind of these ominous words like, "You don't know what you're doing. I've been saving you, protecting you the entire time, you fools." And so this is setting up for future books. But I like how it's also kind of contained in one book where we've defeated the big bad, and it looks like things are going to go well for the characters after this.
Typical Sanderson, making the magic systems so well that he can explain eternal youth with a combination of two of his magic systems. That part was awesome as well. And the twist with Rashek, the ending is just so good. There's so many good things I can say about the ending.
2 points that I had. I really liked Vin's curiosity through the whole book helped her kill him because she'd been talking to Sazed so many times, so she kind of knew that magic system, or else she never would have known what to do. Before I started, I told Ryan that I wasn't going to like this book if it ended in like a huge cliffhanger where you just like had to read the second. I wanted the option to like be totally happy with the first book and like end it there. I didn't love fantasy. And so I really liked how it did that. It kept me going in the second book where I am going to start reading it, but ultimately I could have stopped there and been totally happy.
Yeah, I think that's a big draw of Mistborn. And when I've recommended it to people, that's what I've said exactly. If you only like the first one, you can stop because you've got a full story.
Yeah, I'd also argue that's definitely a very strong point of Mistborn, and the fact that it is such a good standalone book. And making it a standalone book almost draws me in more to wanting to read the next books, because I'm like, man, like, everything went well. Like, I want to know more. Like, tell me more about what went well. And, like, I feel like that's always what I miss about movies is that the last minutes are like, okay, everyone's good, and then it ends. And I'm like, no, I want to see their life. Like, give me 5 years down the road.
Well, then the second book starts, and you're like, oh, maybe things didn't go as well as I thought they did.
Uh-huh. So here's a few unresolved things. Peyton, Cydne, let me know if you guys have any theories on these topics. So what are the myths? Vin was able to use the myths in some way. There's obviously something going on there. What's going on with the Inquisitors? How do they work? What is this deepness thing that the Lord Ruler took care of back in the day? What did he mean in his last kind of cryptic words? And then what's going on with the Khandra? What is this whole race? Like any of these hot button topics after you finish the book, any theories or thoughts or like anything you're really drawn to that you really want to understand?
I honestly want to know more about the Khandra. I feel like they're so mysterious, and especially in the fact that they speak like nothing about themselves. And I almost want to say that they're just like really good, like with their contracts. They know their contract and they only fulfill that. But every single time they talk about themselves, I'm just like, there's something more going on, and I just want to know what it is.
I feel like I don't have a lot of input on those specific questions. I do want to know more about Vin and Elend, obviously.
Okay.
I also want to know more about Sazed because he's one of my favorite characters. So he goes back. Is that already in this book still?
He says he's going to. He's going to head back to his people.
He leaves, and I really want to know what he's going to do because he's going back to the other keepers, I'm assuming, and sharing that knowledge.
It's also cool because he says that he's starting to record like the Legend of the Survivor as if it's a religion. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I just love everything about Cydne. It reminded me a lot of like, you guys all read like The Giver in high school.
Oh gosh.
It just like reminded me a lot of that, just like keeping all these memories and just like such a cool character.
Nice deep cut. Okay, so Sazed also kind of wraps things up at the end where he summarizes what happened in case you didn't quite understand what was going on with the Lord Ruler. They have some speculation with him and Marsh. Marsh is living a pretty sad life. It turns out like he's now stuck as an Inquisitor. I feel bad for Marsh, just kind of a side thing. And then Elend is becoming somewhat of a leader, and you also get some, to Cydne's satisfaction, some closure or some moving forward, some progression of their romance as Vin chooses to basically, they become official, maybe we'll say, towards the end. And then that's the book. That's a wrap for the book.
Should we wrap it up with some worst of the best here?
Yeah, so we already heard Ryan's. So Ryan, thank you for yours. Yours was the romance, and we killed that one already. So Ben, since you're so eager, let's hear yours.
Okay, so mine was the crew. It's the best because obviously you love like every member of the crew, like Spook and Hammond and Dox, and like all these people are awesome. The worst part about it for me was the fact that they didn't really do too much. Their plans failed. It was really just Kelsier and Vin that ended up saving the day. And it really felt like they were just kind of put in there to progress the next two books, right? Kelsier even says it. I gathered you together so that you could lead the new kingdom, right? But I wish that they would have done a bit more this book and that they were a bit more competent in this book. It felt like the only thing they did was taught Vin how to use elements.
This is also one of my criticisms of the book. I feel like some of the minor characters are not as strong in this, one of Sanderson's earlier works. And honestly, a lot of them are kind of interchangeable. Like, I know Vin gets time with each of them kind of one-on-one where they teach her allomancy and they're developed as characters a little, but like 10 years down the road, are you going to be able to know the difference between Ham and Clubs and Breeze and Doxson? Like, probably not, but you're going to remember Vin and Kelsier. So yeah, they weren't super well fleshed out. I agree with that one.
And this is a bit of trivia, but Sanderson recently said that Ham and Dox were going to be or are females in the screenplay that he's working on.
Well, I thought he said if he could go back in time, he would have written them as
Well, he did say
women.
that. Then he said he's writing them in the screenplay as women.
Oh, okay.
The screenplay that doesn't look like it has a whole lot of traction right now, but when it does, Sanderson is ready. It sounds like.
That kind of leads into mine. One of my things is I really liked relating to Vin, and I liked the relationship she had with Kelsier, with Elend, with Sazed, but I feel like there wasn't like another female character for her to interact with, have a relationship, no like sister relationship, no motherly relationship. Obviously, she's had some trauma with her mother in the past, but I just wish there was some other female, like strong female character for her to interact with. The only one we see is Shan, and she's kind of a villain, so not super strong. That was just my one thing. But obviously, I love the relationship she has with all the guys, so not a huge one.
Yeah, it's interesting because we also saw Mraize, right? That's her name? Kelsier's wife?
Mare.
Or Mare, yeah.
Race.
Different part of the Cosmere.
She would have been, I feel like, somebody that Vin would have looked up to. And Vin actually ends up redeeming her kind of by letting Kelsier know that she didn't betray them. So I always thought that there was like an implied would have been relationship there. It's kind of one of those fan questions like, what happens if they would have met, you know?
Totally. She has this like huge interest in Mare. She's always asking Kelsier about her. You can tell she has like a yearning to have like that motherly figure. And I don't know if this is going to happen in the next 2 to 5 books, but it'd be cool if you saw like an afterlife of them meeting. But obviously that probably doesn't happen. Would be cool though.
You never know.
There's always another secret.
I would also say that leads into my worst of the best so perfectly. Mine is I loved Kelsier's relationship with Mare. I know we heard like very minimally about it, but I really liked it. And I almost wished throughout the entire book that there would be this like twist that somehow Vin was their daughter. I was hoping for that the entire time, just in the sense of Vin already had almost everything go wrong in her life thus far. Her brother is terrible to her. Her mother tried to kill her. And I was just hoping this entire time that somehow he was going to make it to where they were her real parents. And it also explained why she was such a strong allomancer and all these other things that I felt like could have been done so well, and completed this like family view for Kelsier of like, wow, I have this daughter, I have a wife, and like I'm gonna die. Like when he died, he could have been like decently happy, and knowing that he had someone to like live on, that was his.
In other words, if Mistborn was a Disney movie.
No. Disney movies, the parents always die. So it sounds like Peyton loves this book so much that she's already started writing fan fiction about it.
I'll expect the first draft on my desk tomorrow, Peyton.
Will do. Be done. Consider it done.
All right, let me close off with mine. I have like 1.5. My quick one is I didn't like how all the army fights were off screen. I know Cydne's going to disagree with me because she's had enough fighting, but all of the large scale fighting was completely off screen. You had like no idea what was really happening. I thought that kind of lowered the stakes when you're just hearing about the house wars, and the Ska Rebellion was like, oh yeah, they're taking down this keep and such. I was like, okay, I guess that's happening, but you don't really get a sense of that the entire empire is in a revolution. So that was one. And then my other one was, this is going to be controversial, and I'm not really sure how I feel about it, to be honest, but I'm throwing it out there. My other one was the Lord Ruler and just the revelation, the whole way that how that worked, because I felt like I wanted more Terrace Man beforehand to get a better idea of how things worked, because I didn't like how Cydne had to explain after the fact, and I feel like maybe some readers didn't quite understand how all of the magic was working together. Like it was almost like Sanderson was biting off too much, and he was expecting you to understand it all. And I don't know if every reader would have picked up on how that worked. So I really liked the twist, but at the same time, it was like, man, this is real ambitious. So I could see maybe a universe where it's done a little more in depth. I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about that.
So you wish it was demonstrated rather than being so complicated that Cydne had to explain it?
Yeah, like I wish there was more Terrace Man interaction, so you had a better idea of how like storing youth really works. Like it's pretty nebulous, and you get more of an idea of how the magic system works in the next books. But in this book, you're just kind of told how it works.
Well, you do see Cydne go through extreme physical changes right before that.
Right.
Like,
right. But I feel like maybe it's just kind of like slapped in there right before in order to say, okay, now you understand, so I'm going to do the big reveal now that you understand. But maybe we needed to understand a bit more throughout. I mean, you do get hints. So like I said, this is not a real strong one for me. I just feel like maybe it could have been a little bit better, but it was really good. Like it was the best part of the book for me, but maybe could have been a little better.
Yeah, I can't decide if I agree. I'm definitely probably one of those readers that doesn't understand all of it. But I did really like when Cydne was explaining it all. I was like, oh my gosh, like that is crazy. Like I really liked how he pulled it all together. But yeah, I could probably agree that we probably could have done a better job of pulling it together ourselves if it was explained a little bit better.
Even something like he like grabbed the armband as it went and he started to turn young again, and then he like let it go, or you know what I mean, like where it showed this like oscillating thing, and that the metal was super, like that would have been show versatile. You know what I mean? I agree with that. Yeah,
super minor, but throwing it up there, and it's going to be controversial because this is like the best scene from the entire book, this reveal.
Yeah, I agree. Solid worst of the best.
All right, so Mistborn, the Final Empire, that is our review. Peyton, Cydne, it's been fun to have you guys on as special guest stars. We'll have to have you back if people on Discord like your input. I'm sure they will, because I was impressed by it personally, gotta say. And if you like Fantology, check us out on social media at Fantology Books, on our website, www.fantologybooks.com. Hop on Discord and chat with us. Check out Patreon for some exclusives. And we have merch now. We should have advertised merch maybe at the beginning of the pod, but merch does in fact exist. You can get your water bottles, you can get your coffee mugs, you can get your t-shirts, you can get your face masks, all branded with Fantology logos. So you're not going to want to miss those. There's a discount right now, actually. So yeah, check that out for sure. Okay, thanks everyone, and we will see you guys next time.
Hey, I would just like to say that for all of you people who have significant others or siblings or friends who don't like fantasy, maybe there's hope for you in the form of Mistborn.
Seriously, tell your wives to read Mistborn, because my wife
Or husbands.
read it, and she's graciously watching the kids right now, but she loved it. She like devoured these books. So even if they say that they might not like fantasy, chances are they'll like this book.
This is the secret sauce.
Sometimes you have to sit down with them and force them to listen/read it with at least the first few chapters with you before they get into it.
It worked.
Road trip, be in charge of the ox. That's how you gotta do it.
Yeah. All right, that's all I wanted to add. Thanks, Steven.
All right, that's a wrap for Fantology. See you guys.
Yeah.
Bye.